Alright guys, so before we get started, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And click that little bell button so that you get notifications when we post new content. You know, just a little something for the YouTube algorithm. Ending police brutality in 5 steps. So in this video, we're going to discuss 5 different ways that can possibly lead to ending police brutality. Before we begin, as a disclaimer, I would like to say that I am not an expert on these modalities, nor do I think that these are the end-all be-all of suggestions that would help us create a more just society. The intention of these proposals is to set the groundwork and to also create a lens through which we can look at our society and decide what we would like to change and what we would like to keep or enhance. So to begin, number 1, restorative justice. According to the Oxford Dictionary, restorative justice is a system of criminal justice which focuses on the rehabilitation of offenders through reconciliation with victims and community at large. Now that's to say that restorative justice is an approach to justice in which one of the responses to crime is to organize a meeting between the victim and the offender, and sometimes with the representatives of the wider community. So what does that look like practically? One example would be community courts. Community courts actually exist throughout a variety of cities across the United States. And as the name suggests, it focuses less on punitive measures and more on community-focused solutions. The victim will be present, as well as the offender and representatives from the community. And they would decide together what would be the best way to move forward, typically involving some sort of restitution for the victim, whether financially or maybe the person does some sort of community service or something in the service of the victim. The intention is not to be punitive, but rather to encourage positive community relationships and to make right what was done wrong. Number 2, free public health care. According to the US Census, in 2018, 8.5% of people, or 27.5 million people, did not have health insurance at any point during the year. In fact, the uninsured rate and number of uninsured increased from 2017 from 7.9% or 25.6 million to the 8.5% or 27.5 million. The US Census Bureau then reports that the percentage of people with health insurance coverage for all or part of 2018 was 91.5%, lower than the rate in 2017. Between 2017 and 2018, the percentage of people with public coverage decreased 0.4 percentage points, and the percentage of people with private coverage did not significantly change. In 2018, private health insurance coverage continued to be more prevalent than public coverage, covering 67.3% of the population and 34.4% of the population respectively. Of the subtypes of health insurance coverage, employer-based insurance remained the most common, covering 55.1% of the population for all or part of the calendar year. Now, what does this all mean? 8.5 by all accounts doesn't sound like a large number, but considering the population of the United States, it is quite a number. And of those people who do have health insurance, many of them face a huge financial burden as medicines, prescriptions, and ambulance bills, insurance premiums all prevent many people from either seeing a doctor or being properly treated for their conditions. While 27.5 million people in the United States do not have health insurance, of those folks who do have health insurance, many of them face a huge financial burden by having to pay for large health insurance premiums, prescription drug prices, and then also procedures like operations or even riding in an ambulance. The financial burden that is put on many Americans for lack of insurance, undercoverage, or high premiums poses not only a financial risk for the economy, but also a public health risk, especially considering the current state of public health. By granting people public health care without out-of-pocket expense, we help remove the barrier for people to have access to health care that is adequate and not only treats conditions, but also preemptively avoids having any sort of treatment in the first place. Number 3, decriminalizing all nonviolent crimes. Now that might sound crazy, but let me explain for a moment. According to Americans for Progress, every 25 seconds someone in America is arrested for drug possession. The number of Americans arrested for drug possessions has in fact tripled since 1980, reaching 1.3 million arrests per year in 2015, which is 6 times the number of arrests for drug sale. 1/5 of the incarcerated population, or 456,000 individuals, is serving time for drug charges. Another 1.15 million are on probation and parole for drug-related offenses. In fact, incarcerating people for drug-related offenses has been shown to have little impact on substance misuse rates. Instead, incarceration is linked with increased mortality from overdose. In the first 2 weeks after their release from prison, individuals are almost 13 times more likely to die than the general population. The leading cause of death among recently released individuals is overdose. During that period, individuals are at a 129% greater risk of dying from an overdose than the general population. So the data is in. Incarcerating people for drug offenses has not really proved to show any significant reduction in the abuse of drugs. Instead, I believe that drug offenses should be considered public health issue. Many people find themselves addicted to a variety of different substances. Many of those substances are prescription drugs and are legally obtained. And when they cannot be legally obtained, people may involve themselves in risky behavior. And in order to prevent risky behavior, in order to prevent shame from wanting to admit that you have a problem or seeking help, we should incentivize seeking help and eliminating any legal ramifications from a person having an addiction and treat it as a mental health and substance abuse problem, giving them the resources to be able to properly address their addiction and to be rehabilitated into society. Number 4, tuition-free public colleges and universities. Now, this is one issue that's gotten a lot of attention in the last few years, mainly because paying for tuition poses a large economic barrier for many families across the United States when considering going to college or sending their children to college. In fact, according to an article recently published by Forbes magazine, the total student loan debt in the United States has now come to $1.56 trillion. Now that's a humongous number. I've never seen that many zeros. In fact, there were 44.7 million people in the United States who have student loan debt, with the average student loan debt totaling to $32,731. The average person spending money on student loans will pay about $393 a month. The median student loan debt is about $17,000. Now, this is only talking about people that choose to go to college or that have families that can send them to college. They are experiencing a huge economic burden. However, there is another side of it. People that can't even afford to take out a loan or may not qualify to take out a loan to be able to attend a college or university of their choice. This is incredibly limiting to a large number of people. In fact, the millennial and the Gen Z generation are at a unique disadvantage to previous generations, as they have been born into an economy that severely limits their ability to actualize their dreams. So just imagine with me, what would the world look like if everyone had access, free of charge, to public colleges and universities? People perhaps would be able to open their own stores, or maybe they might be able to pursue that acting career that they wanted, or perhaps they would be able to travel the world. The possibilities are endless. Or maybe they would be able to create new systems that allow us to explore space. I mean, we can go on and on about this. I mean, my mind can go wild on this. But the point being that, again, we see that a financial aspect of this is really posing a large barrier for many families around the United States that is in a way not allowing them to be able to actualize what it is they're passionate about. And when people are able to actualize their passions, they're able to create things that are valuable to themselves, but also to the society at large. Number 5, I know you've been waiting for it, last but certainly not least, universal basic income. Now, universal basic income goes by a lot of different names. Basic income, universal basic income, citizens basic income guarantee, basic living stipend, guaranteed annual income, or universal demo grant. Essentially, universal basic income, or whatever you would like to call it, is a theoretical governmental program or a periodic payment delivered to all citizens of a given population without means testing or work requirements. This means that just in the case of stimulus checks being mailed to Americans during a global crisis, periodic payments would be sent to all Americans regardless of their working status. Now, this sounds nice, right? Let's imagine what our world would look like with universal basic income. I'm taken back to the previous step, which is to have access to public colleges and universities without any tuition. Well, what would happen if we had universal basic income? Instead of worrying about taking a job just because it pays a certain amount or not taking a job because it doesn't pay what you want, being able to have the bare minimum guaranteed to you, enough money to have a roof over your head, to have groceries in your refrigerator, and take a little time for yourself or your family here and there is a tremendous step up for where many Americans are today, and will allow you more freedom and more time to be able to be creative, to create new technologies, beautiful art, all things that would be greatly beneficial to our greater society and help drive us forward in our quest for innovation and humanity and loving one another. So, what do you think about these 5 steps? Do you think they'll help end police brutality? Well, talk to me in the comments. What do you think? Any suggestions, anything I left out, or is there anything that you would personally do differently? Go ahead and comment below and let us know what you think. And with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope that you learned something today that inspired you. Be well and stay inspired.